I'm going to talk about the college football playoff rankings, but I'm going to just more concentrate on in the top 15 or so because it there's no need to go over everything. And what my thoughts on it, really, it's just a 4 team right now, as we all know. This is the last year for it. Georgia's the new number one. I think that makes a ton of sense, especially when you dominate a top 10 team like that. I mean, they deserve it. And then Ohio State, and then Michigan, and Florida State, and Washington. To me, that's the top five no matter what. And we know Ohio State will play Michigan down the line. Then obviously Oregon's right behind them, which makes sense. The Pac-12 is a tougher league this year than the Big 12, which is why Texas is number 7. It's not even mentioning Texas is barely surviving teams lately, despite having big leads and then cut down to one possession. Alabama is number 8. Makes sense. They lost to Texas. Yeah. Missouri is at number 9. Louisville 10. And then Oregon State, Penn State, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and LSU round out the top 15. I really do think you could interchange 10 and 11 if you want. It doesn't really matter. Makes sense to me. And realistically, let's just say that just the top 8 are the only teams that are going to make the college football playoff with one loss. What does each team need to do? I think as long as Georgia wins the next 2 games, they should be in regardless. Should be in. But we'll have to wait and see. Of course, winning out, they're definitely in. Ohio State, they have to beat Michigan on the road, and then they're going to win the Big Ten champion this upcoming game coming up, and then they have to beat Michigan at Michigan. And that's not going to be an easy task. Even if there is no potentially Jim Harbaugh. Because Jim Harbaugh is going to coach them up during the week. I mean, and I really don't think the Big Ten West is going to really challenge either Ohio State or Michigan at this point. That's the truth. And the same thing goes for Michigan. You got to beat Maryland, and then you got to beat Ohio State. And you should win the Big Ten championship game. But if you do lose, or one of these, either Ohio State or Michigan does lose in a Big Ten championship, that would be a big shock to everybody. And I would dare to say they might be out because of a bad loss, potentially. Washington, I think they could still get in as a one-loss team because let's face it, they got Oregon State coming up, and it's going to be a hard game. But if they win that game, they should beat Washington State at home no matter what, in my opinion. It's this upcoming game that's really the kicker, because Oregon State is no slouch of a team, and they're very difficult to play at home. So, yeah, obviously, if they do lose this week, but they beat Washington State, and then let's just say they play Oregon again for the Pac-12 championship, I think they're going to get in. Now, Oregon, the room for error is a little bit less. You have to beat Arizona State on the road this week. You got to be a really solid Oregon State team, though. But luckily, that game is at home and not on the road. Now, Florida State, I forgot to mention them right after Michigan, but you get the whole point. You have to beat North Alabama this week, which you should, and you should beat Florida. Even though that game is on the road, it's a rivalry. So I'm just saying, you have to find a way to win the next 2 games, and you got to win the ACC title game. That's the most realistic path. And they're going to be an ACC title game regardless. They just don't need a loss to Florida, because that would really hurt them, in my opinion. Now Texas, on the other hand, I know there's no Jonathan Brooks for the rest of the year, and their pass defense does need to improve. They got the run defense, and I give them the skill position, like the wide receivers and the offensive line. And with Quinn Ewers being back, that helps Texas. Because if it was Malik Murphy still, room for error is still not great. It's still not that great anyway, because they have to go on the road to Iowa State this week. That's not going to be an easy game. I mean, that's the truth. And they have Texas Tech at home, but I think they beat Tech. I do think they'll beat Texas Tech a week from now, and obviously you have to win the Big 12 championship game. We just don't know who, because it's just a mess for second place right now. I mean, that's the truth, and if you do lose to Iowa State, Texas, you're screwed for the college football playoff. Forget it. But even if you get to the Big 12 championship game, yeah, that's going to be interesting, and who knows who's going to be there. But we'll know more clarification after this week, hopefully. But if not, you got to wait the following week. And that's the truth. Now, Alabama's pretty much, you got to win out just to get in. They're going to be in the SEC title game no matter what. You got to beat Chattanooga, which you should beat them this week anyway. But at Auburn, that's dangerous. That's a rivalry game, so anything could happen and all that, and especially on the road. You need to find a way to win that game, and you got to beat Georgia. It's a must, because a 2-loss team is not going to get in the current 4-team format. But if it was like a 12-team format, that's a different story. But you get the point on Alabama. Missouri, there's no way. They're not going to get in the college football playoff. They're done. Unless major chaos happens. You got to hope to win the next 2 games. And then all the chaos ensues. But they're not going to get in as a 2-loss team. Let's be clear. Louisville, they have to beat Miami, Florida this week, and it's going to be an interesting game. And you got to beat Kentucky. I mean, that's the truth. And we know Kentucky has been good against Louisville in this rivalry some under Mark Stoops recently. So yeah, that's not going to be easy game. You have to win out just to even think about getting in. And that's not going to be easy when Florida State's right there. Honestly, if you lose to Florida State or anybody else, you're done. There's no way for Oregon State. Forget Penn State getting in. There's no chance. They're not going to even make the Big Ten championship game. Now, Oregon State, however, is a little bit different. Oregon State has to win the next 2 weeks. And they have to beat, you got to win this week against Washington. And you got to beat Oregon. That's not going to be easy until on the road. I'm just saying. And then maybe you get to the Pac-12 title game and then create chaos. The problem is, even if you win the next 2 weeks, you got to hope Arizona loses one game. They own head-to-head over you. That's the thing. And I just don't see. Yeah, I don't know. That's not realistic, probably, for them to get the college football playoff. Forget Ole Miss. They're done. Yeah, they're done. They're not going to even make the SEC title game. Same thing goes for LSU. Oklahoma is a little bit different story. It's probably not likely to make the college football playoff at all, unless major chaos happens. I mean, that's the truth. And as a 2-loss team, you've got to beat BYU on the road this week, which I know BYU is better at home, but they're not that great this year. And you need to beat TCU anyway, and I think you do, regardless what happens in this BYU game. And you gotta hope to get to the Big 12 title game first. I just don't think it's possibly realistic for them to get in. the college football playoff, it's more like those one-loss teams. Like I said, it's very unlikely. They gotta have a lot of chaos to occur. And right now, they would be behind Oklahoma State. They need Oklahoma State to lose to somebody. Because they own head-to-head against Iowa State, but don't against Oklahoma State, obviously. They had to go on the road to Houston. Oklahoma State doesn't. They got BYU at home. I don't know if they're going to even lose a game. Then again, who thought Oklahoma State was going to get killed last week by UCF? I thought maybe that could have been a potential loss for Oklahoma State, but not an embarrassment. You know. But even then, they were the chances of them making a college football playoff were done anyway. And then Kansas State's going to play Iowa State, and I think Kansas State beats Iowa State, especially at home, and they need to win their game against Kansas this week, and I think they do, even though that game's on the road, and who knows how they're going to do on the road this year. They have not been very kind to Kansas State, to say the least. So yeah, we don't know who Texas is going to even play right now, because as you could tell by the standings, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Kansas State, they're tied for second right now. It's just a mess. But if Texas would lose this week, yeah, forget Big 12 game college football playoff. They're done. And Texas has to win out just to even think about getting in. And even if, like, they win out, is it going to be enough for Texas to get in the college football playoff? Because they need a Florida State to lose an ACC title game. Not just lose an ACC title game, but they need to lose to Florida. Then an ACC title game. Or even both. I mean, have them lose twice. Because they're not going to lose to North Alabama. Let's just be realistic. Obviously, things going to work itself out between Michigan and Ohio State. And that game is at Michigan, so that really tilts the favor a little bit towards Michigan. They need Washington to lose this week. Texas does. They need them to lose. And then if they don't lose this week, Washington doesn't. I think they could still get in if they went out to the Pac-12 title game until they play Oregon again. I don't know if they will get in regardless. Because if they just lose to a one-loss Oregon. So I really think Oregon gets in over Washington then. If they could even get to the college football playoff. I really do think that the loser of the Ohio State-Michigan game, they're not going to get in the college football playoff. As long as Georgia wins their SEC title game, Florida State does too, as well as like they went out. That's two spots take either way in Michigan. Obviously, the Big Ten is going to take their one spot. So Georgia, probably one Big Ten school, Florida State, then the Pac-12, possibly, or a one-loss Texas. It's really debatable between the one-loss Texas versus a one-loss Washington, but we know the Pac-12 this year is a lot tougher than the Big 12. When you look at the rankings, it's the truth. Because right now it's just Kansas in the college football playoff rankings. There's Oklahoma, which what if Texas doesn't even play Oklahoma in the Big 12 title game? That's not going to help them in terms of the resume boosting for the college football playoff then. That's the problem. If they have to play Kansas State or even Oklahoma State or one of those two schools, or even Iowa State as a long shot, which I don't know about them going on the road to beat Kansas State. I don't see it happening, though. We have to wait and see. But you get what I'm saying. it's just a rough spot for Texas. You need to have the highest ranked Big 12 school to be in a Big 12 title game with you, just to give yourself another quality win. More quality win. Because if Oregon and Washington play each other again, you're going to have a very hard time comparing resumes between that team and yours. We're going to just wait from a week from now, and I'll discuss these again a week and what the path is realistically. I am not really sure why Kansas is still ranked in the college football playoff rankings, because they lost to unranked Texas Tech. Oklahoma State, maybe they could have been dropped. I don't know. Maybe, yeah, because they got killed by Oklahoma State. I don't know. It's probably because they beat Oklahoma. That's it. And Kansas State too. That's probably why they're in. But overall, it's not really that bad. Because the top 5 should be the top 5 no matter what. It's a matter of you got to switch 1 and 2 because Georgia dominated top 10 team. Anyways, if you like this content, like and subscribe button. See you guys later on the road to 600 subscribers. Of course, the ultimate goal is 1,000 more. So I make money off this. Of course, liking the video, commenting the video really helps the YouTube algorithm, so more people could see it. Sharing the video does help as well, so more people could watch. And if you're watching and not subscribed, hit subscribe button. It's free, and hit the notification bell as well.